satisfaction seems to be Israel has tried to completely negate Iran's ability to strike back. And in these strikes, Israel's own assessment is that 3 of their top commanders have been eliminated, including the defense minister, the man in charge of their nuclear program, and also one senior official from the Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And what is it that the retaliation have been like? The US bases in Middle East, those have been struck as well. So those US military bases have been struck by Iran as in terms of retaliation. Of course, they've tried to attack Israel. Also explosions heard in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE and Oman. We've been showing you visuals from Abu Dhabi and Dubai as well and there's an advisory from the Interior Ministry in Abu Dhabi too. So all of these areas which are bases of United States. So Iran's retaliation not limited to Israel alone, it is also going ahead and targeting the United States bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE and Oman. So the entire Middle East has also been pulled into this escalating conflict between Iran and Israel, supported by the United States of America. We're keeping our focus on this story, which is fast developing. Stay with us as we slip into a very quick break. We'll come back with more updates from the ground.
I do want to just get your sort of initial response to the news that we got, 3.5 hours ago of the first attacks in what the US president has described as a massive ongoing military operation on Iran. Maha.
Good morning, Becky. Look, for me, this operation is about regime change. The immediate targets were the presidential palace, the ministries, government buildings, in addition to all the military targets. President Trump has almost said that. Netanyahu is saying that quite bluntly, that this is an opportunity. For the first time in decades, the Prime Minister of Israel found a willing partner in the US president to undertake an operation of this attack. What is clear is that the negotiations, and what we were hearing about the negotiations yesterday, were just the intermission in a much broader act. This is now the second act, and we have to wait and see what is going to happen next.
We were just talking retaliation, and we are now seeing and getting confirmation from the Revolutionary Guard media that 4 US bases in the Gulf have been targeted in Bahrain, here in Abu Dhabi, in Kuwait, and of course in Qatar. We've got video out of both Bahrain and Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi has closed its airspace, understandably, after these strikes, and we've got new video coming in from here. I just wonder, how much regional escalation do you expect? Clearly, we have no idea how long this massive military operation, as described by the US president, will go on. But what do you expect, and what do you make of, the consistent messaging, as it were, from around this region of de-escalation, taking a diplomatic route, wanting to see these talks successful, and indeed hearing from the Omani foreign minister in the past 24 hours, speaking to a US network in Washington, suggesting that these talks were in a good place and just needed time?
The fact that the Omani foreign minister went to Washington tells you a lot. Went to Washington at this moment tells you a lot. The signals were there that the US and Israel were about to launch something quite massive. And he went there to try and walk them back from this, or at least say, give diplomacy a chance. The region is on pins and needles. The last thing we need is more war, because ultimately it's the region that will pay the price for this, both in terms of lives, but also in terms of economies. At every single level, it is the region that is going to pay the price for whatever comes next in this war with the Iranian regime. Certainly, we were hearing from Gulf officials all the way back in the summer. They were saying, okay, we don't mind a weaker Iranian regime. However, we certainly don't want a hegemonic Israel. An Israel that today is saying it has a biblical right to hit anywhere it wants in the region. You have an ambassador, a US ambassador to Israel, talking about this. There's a kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Is it a messianic approach to
Good evening, and thank you very much for being here and making time for our panel discussions in this hall. We have with us perhaps the A-list of Indian geopolitical and diplomatic analytical heft. So we're very proud to have Taranjeet ji, Kamal Sibal ji, and Ruchira ji with us. And what a day, Kamal ji, to be speaking. A day when war is broken out in the Gulf, a day when Israel and America have got together and they have struck Iran. Taranjeet ji, just a few days ago we were talking and we were talking about larger equations and things changing this way and that way. But here we have a scenario that has emerged that perhaps some of us were fearing would be very disruptive. So I want to first begin with you, Taranjeet ji, and this is something that's important because clearly this is happening now in India's backyard. We have relationships both with Iran and Israel. With Israel, of course, you saw the bonhomie just 2 days ago where the Prime Minister and Benjamin Netanyahu were together. The Prime Minister addressed the Israeli Knesset, and the Prime Minister said that we back Israel, that India backs Israel in the actions it needs to take to defend itself. Perhaps he didn't realize that there was going to be this sort of a consequence. But India will be now, questions will be asked of it, I'm sure, because we've assumed this posture of strategic autonomy. There are many stresses on India now because people expect us to align with this bloc or the other. These are times where, as you know, conflagrations are breaking out and India has emerged as such an important player on the international stage. So can we continue to push this posture and remain, in a sense, equidistant from various powers?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to be with my former Foreign Secretary and my very good friend, Ruchira here. Rahul, I'll slightly differ on that. I know there is an immediate issue which is at hand, and there is understandable excitement. But international relations between countries have always been complicated and complex. It's a different era. The crisis will be different. So, coming to this part, I would say that, look, strategic autonomy is not a concept in vacuum. It's connected, one, in the environment which you live in, which has regional dimension and it has international dimension. And at some stage we can go into it, I know. Secondly, the capability and the capacity. And that has, again, many dimensions. That has an economic dimension, that has a defense dimension, that will have many other aspects also, again, on which we can go into. So that part also plays a significant role. And finally, if I may say, in both these, we always develop partnerships. And that's where strategic autonomy, it doesn't mean that Look, the non-alignment of Cold War was a different era. Today, things have moved, and every day we see the relationships move. So there are challenges. No doubt, strategic autonomy gives you the flexibility of having relations on specific issues. It doesn't mean that you go in for an alignment with X or Y. And once we go into details, I will certainly get into it.
Okay.
But let me give an opportunity to my other
let's
colleagues
open up
also.
the floor. Mr. Sibal, Israel wants us to be part of the hexagon, though exact shape and who should be on it has not been enunciated upon by Prime Minister Netanyahu. He definitely has expectations of New Delhi. On the other side, we have deep and entrenched strategic interests in Iran, as you know. And some would say that Iran belongs to a certain other bloc. You could say in the background is China, Russia. We also have ties with China, Russia. How do we now navigate as we go forward with this Gulf War? And there are going to be implications for us, economic implications. There are strategic implications. What do? We keep sort of playing this game where we somehow slither between the two blocks, or do we have to now make up our minds?
No, I think we've made up our mind that we're not going to join any bloc, and this is part of our traditional diplomacy right from the time of our independence. Non-alignment was a product of the Cold War, but the spirit behind non-alignment remains. And since we are targeted always about being non-aligned and to choose sides, therefore the vocabulary has changed. Now, therefore, we talk about multi-alignment or of strategic autonomy. But basically, it's the same thing, that we keep the independence of our, we retain the independence of our foreign policy as much as we can. No country is fully independent, but nevertheless, whatever margin of maneuver we have, we will maintain it and not choose side needlessly and make our strategic interests become a part of the strategic interests of other countries where we actually differ, where our national interests do not demand us to align ourselves. So that is the meaning of the strategic autonomy. And we will continue to maintain that. Now, you said whether we can do this in the context of what is happening, with constant pressure to choose sides and this and that and that.
And it's not just pressure, Mr. Sibal. There will be a winning side in this conflagration, if one is to believe what the US says, that we are going to ensure that Iran complies. If need be, we will even put in a regime that's favorable to us. So should we not be on the winning side because we have so many states?
Well, I would ask the question that has the United States succeeded in creating a winning side for itself anywhere in this region? The only country is Israel. But apart from that, it has failed everywhere. It's failed in Iraq, it has failed in Libya, it has failed in Syria, it failed in Afghanistan. In fact, they have destabilized the entire region without actually being able to stabilize the region and promote their interests. And the reason why, and because they're not being able to do that, they have chosen another victim, and this time it is Iran. There's no reason for them to attack Iran. Iran has never committed aggression against the United States. So what is the reason for the United States to commit aggression against Iran? Yes, Iran has been very vocal in terms of Israel and denying their right to existence. I think that was a grave strategic mistake they have committed over the years. Rather than let the Arab countries take up cudgels on behalf of the Palestinians or Arabs, they have, for reasons I can explain, but this is not the platform to do so, they chose to be very aggressive in terms of protecting the Palestinian rights and therefore attracted the ire of Israel and United States and the West in general. But other than that, I can't see what is the casus belli. If, for example, the nuclear issue is the casus belli, United States helped Pakistan become nuclear. Iran has nuclear weapons. North Korea walked out of the NPT. Nothing has been done about it. United States has walked out of all disarmament agreements. They are now saying they're going to test again. Now, that is their own position with regard to nuclear weapons, but when it comes to Iranian nuclear weapons, then it becomes a casus belli. Now, in 2015, when they had the JCPOA, Obama was fully satisfied with the agreement. At that time, I had written, if you see my articles, that Iran has made such compromises with its national sovereignty that no self-respecting country would make. They made it. And then they said, no, they are 1 month away, 2 months away, 3 months away from nuclear weapons. 11 years have passed, and the same narrative. They're 1 month away, they're 2 months away, even when they have formally declared that they don't want nuclear weapons and the IAEA is there. You can always say they cheat, but that is just a way of saying things.
So are you saying that Trump is joining Israel to attack Iran because he wants to either deflect attention from his domestic problems, or he wants to showboat and tell the world that America is still great, and this impression that the world is getting that America is sort of receding inwards is wrong? So, I mean, why is this happening then?
I would say that a lot of what he's doing in foreign policy actually is a product of domestic policies. And that is where the problem is. And now that the elections in November are coming up for the House, now there is more concern that if he loses the House, his foreign policy is finished, his domestic policy is finished. And there are the Epstein files. There are a lot of things that are happening inside which actually, and plus, of course, the Israeli lobby and the huge amounts of money that he has got for his own election from the Israeli lobby. That explains why he's doing this.
Ruchiraji, let me bring you into this conversation because, again, I'm going to ask you to explain to the gathering here. At UN, India has tended on certain issues, Ukraine, for example, to abstain. Is there a price? Has this translated, for example, into greater diplomatic leverage? Or have abstentionisms diluted our moral influence? People expect us to take a position to say that, look, you must do this, or we must vote for here, or there should be ceasefires, this, that, the other. Even on this Israel-Gaza issue, we sort of abstained. Is there going to be a cost? Is it an advantage? How do you view this? You've been in the UN system.
No, thank you very much for that question. Let's look at the abstentions and the yes votes of India in the United Nations in recent years. So you're absolutely right. The abstentions have gone up dramatically. About 44% of the times India abstains on UN votes. And the yes votes too have gone down. They are at a historic low. So India is saying yes just half the number of times while the abstention votes are going up. Now, what does it indicate? It indicates a more selective and nuanced approach to global issues within the wider ambit of multi-alignment in a multipolar world. Now, what I want to tell you is that don't imagine even for a minute that it's just India where the abstentions are rising. It is a broad trend with other countries too. It's
Really?
not just India, absolutely. So today, India's vote is more issue-based. It is not bloc-based. It's not an automatic alignment because the world is more messy, it is more complicated. And this is a broader trend with other countries as well. So that is the first thing. The second point is something that you raised in your initial intervention when you talked about India being critiqued for this policy of strategic autonomy. And you also inquired, I think, not explicitly but implicitly, whether the space for India to exercise strategic autonomy has shrunk. Well, let me tell you, of course, as Ambassador Sibal has just said, India is going to exercise its independence in decision-making. Don't expect that to change. That is anchored in our history. That is anchored in our evolution. And it does indeed cut across the board. It cuts across the political spectrum. There is no walking this back.
But ma'am, critics will say that, look, India's approach has been always based on a moral outlook, at least in the past. And I'll pick up that thread with Taranjit ji also. But I want to ask you this, and many people say these abstentions introduce a degree of hedging. India sits on the fence on important moral issues. For example, when Russia went into Ukraine, a lot of countries said that that was a violation of another country's sovereignty. China could do that and invoke the precedent against India tomorrow. We share a border which is unsettled with China. There could be Pakistan tomorrow that might resort to some sort of misadventure. And they do. So how do we square this with a moral...
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right to raise this question. I think a lot of people are raising this issue, this difference between the principle of it and the practice of it. Indeed so. But whoever said that strategic autonomy is a risk-free policy, it is a very fine balancing act. You're balancing between the major powers. Let's say you have a resolution at the United Nations. Now, United Nations resolutions are not so simple. There are multiple clauses. There could be the language in a particular clause. There could be language on a particular issue. There could be something to do with the implementation schedule. There could be the prevailing geopolitical environment at the time of the adoption of the resolution. So India calculates all of this very carefully. And I would say to the critics that yes, indeed, India is being critiqued because there seems to be, and I stress upon the word seems, there seems to be a dissonance between the principle and the practice of it. But remember that today the world is very different from what it was in the earlier days. Earlier there was bloc-based voting. There was the Soviet bloc, there was the Western bloc, there was the non-aligned bloc. Today most countries, as I said, are voting according to the specific issue. It's not just India. So yes, you can say that the abstention votes have gone up. For sure. On Ukraine, India has consistently abstained at the United Nations General Assembly. And in the case of Gaza, we have pivoted from abstention to a yes vote to a humanitarian truce and pivoted back again to an abstention. So that is very much there. I would say it's a calibrated ambiguity in a polarized world.
Okay.
One is that when you talk about morality, I would like to understand what is the moral driving force between Western policies all along. I mean, we've been talking of double standards all the time. All the time. They don't practice what they preach. They talk about values, but they don't implement their own values when it comes to their national interests. So this moral angle I totally discard. I don't think we should pay any attention. With regard to the China thing, if there were huge numbers of Chinese living in India, which New Delhi was targeting and committing atrocities and killed 15,000 of them, then the situation would have some parallel with what is happening in the Donbass region. But I think the India-China border situation and the issues behind it are rather different,
Okay. So,
Rahul, just one tiny point very quickly. You raised your eyebrows. You expressed some surprise when I said that, it's part of a broader trend in the United Nations. But might I give you very quick examples? Brazil has been abstaining. So has Indonesia. So has South Africa. And many other countries. Whenever you have these polarizing resolutions, this is a development post-Ukraine. The polarization has become very sharp across the United Nations, a reflection of the times that we are living in. So whenever you have these polarizing resolutions, more and more countries, you could use the word, are hedging, or more and more countries are abstaining.
okay, well, that's a great point and a data-driven point. So we are not alone. Taranjit, I have to ask you this because, you referred to geopolitical implications and you talked about regional implications. Now, let's come back to this subject of the Gulf situation that is unfolding. We have friends in both capitals, as I said, Tehran and Tel Aviv. There's also a political aspect to this because we have Muslims here in India, we have a big Shia population. There's obviously an expectation among them also that we stand up for their brethren in Iran and so on and so forth. Now, do you believe that this Gulf crisis is going to put pressure, add to the complications that Delhi has to endure? There's a subplot, there's a Gaza-Israel thing going on, now there's a wider Gulf which could obviously engulf, to pun on the word, many more countries. Where do we go with this?
So, Rahul, Ambassador Sibal mentioned about the moral part and putting it out.
No, because the opposition, sir, is asking questions.
Absolutely. Look, he's very right. On the moral part, everybody has an argument. So we will not get anywhere there. And it's only a debating point, because at the end of the day, as you rightly said, any government of the day has to face the reality.
That's right.
And it's based on national interest, and national interest is seen by each country according to its own interest. So when you ask me on does this action complicate affairs, certainly. So did the Russian going into Ukraine on fertilizers, on a whole lot of, and we had to navigate that. I think on this particular issue, definitely there are going to be implications for United States, there are going to be implications for Iran, there are going to be implications for Israel, and a whole lot of us. And I think, again, I would say, and it's a general statement, we can definitely go into, there will always be challenges, but it is incumbent on us to convert those into an opportunity.
So on this case of Iran, for example, there's pressure that we withdraw from Chabahar. I think we've given in. The Americans have an expectation. You've been our envoy to the United States as recent as I think about 3 years ago. So you have perhaps the most updated idea of how the American establishment is thinking. You continue, I'm sure, to interlocute with them. So I want to ask you, sir, tomorrow the Americans are sort of dictating terms as to how we should deploy our strategic interest, where we should invest and so on and so forth. If we don't or are not seen to be taking a position that is backing the American intervention, because I'm sure a statement has to come out very soon from the MEA or from New Delhi, there's going to be a repercussion. So I'm saying, should we just throw in a lot with the US on this? And
since you mentioned when I was the ambassador there, I also want to draw your attention. The CATSA waiver came at that time.
Yes.
The S-400 were picked up.
That's true.
And also the oil issue was very much so.
But Biden was more reasonable, people would argue.
Well, I would avoid commenting on that because that's domestic polity.
Yeah.
The reality is, whoever is the president of the United States, it's not decided by India. You have to tackle whoever the administration is. So that's why I avoided commenting on this. Because, look, commentary is the easiest. And especially when you are retired, you can comment on anything. But there is a bigger responsibility of the country. So the leadership is tackling this situation. And I do not certainly agree that somebody can throw tantrum on X or Y. All these issues are looked into in our overall broader interest. So if there is some give here, there's always a take there. And in this particular issue, I'm sure number of factors have gone in. You seem to be more aware than me what has been given in and what has been given out. I think you had Mr. Goyal also yesterday at your forum. But I can tell you one thing that from my experience, that it's the overall package which is important, including for President Trump. And I'm not giving any justification, but if you look at over a period of time, there is a necessity and importance of tackling all these. Now, as you said, for us, Iran has a certain implications, just like for Iran itself. Ultimately, on the ground, the strength of the economy, the strength of the defense, the strength of so many other aspects, including the people's morale.
So that was the Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has appealed to all Iranians to come together, and he's called this the fight to remove a regime that always claimed death to Jews, death to Israel, and death to America. Now, America has called this Operation Epic Fury. Israel has called it Operation Lion's Roll. Iran has called the retaliation as Fateh Khyber. Let's go across to Sanjay Suri joining us live, even as Israel has claimed to intercept one of the ballistic missiles sent their way by the Iranians. 30 to 75 ballistic missiles launched, according to Iranian media. Sanjay, what's the scenario? Have you seen the sirens go off? Yes, Sanjay. Sanjay, can you hear me? We'll just try and connect with you. We're getting pictures and also claims by the Israeli Defense Forces that their defense array is ready to meet the missiles that have been launched from their silos by the Iranians. Now, there is a large security deployment in Tehran. Roads have been blocked around the Khamenei residence. Israel has come out and said Israel has the right to defend itself. One missile launched from Iran towards central Israel was intercepted by the air defenses. There are no immediate reports of injury. Additional rocket fire towards the state of Israel, this time toward the center of the country. Sirens are now activated at the center and also at Shepsala. There is a fresh map that's come. We try and put that out. It's a huge cluster all across central Israel. That's where the Iranian response is being currently targeted. We've got one of those images here. I can try and show it to our viewers on my phone. But right now, what we're given to understand is this is a huge cluster. The latest that's come in on the news reports, just showing it to our viewers, you can see. Sanjay Suri is with us. Sanjay, even as we are looking at a huge burst of alarms coming through, central Israel is currently being captured or being targeted. Yes, Sanjay. I'm going to reduce the brightness on my screen and try and go to Sanjay Suri.
We had the alarm going, we had a pre-alarm, and now we've had the siren going, and everyone's been asked to get to a shelter within 90 seconds. It's been more than that now. My friend here is right here with us. So why are you not inside a shelter?
It's too packed. It's too packed. Too many dogs, too many people, too many babies. So there's not a lot of space. And I'm waiting for it to be clear, what's going on.
Well, the shelter will be clear when the alarm goes away. The idea should be there, and it's not exactly a party time in a shelter, so there are going to be people there. But you'd rather stay outside than be in a shelter?
I'd rather be safe, also outside, and I'd rather this situation will be stopped against Israel. But I have to make sure that everybody understands doesn't kill us, make us stronger. So as much threats we're going to have on our survival only makes us stronger. So be careful, because we are very safe and we are a very strong country and a beautiful country. And I invite everybody to come to Israel, and this will end soon.
Well, they're not going to come while the sirens are sounding, to be sure. But do you think it's safe outside?
No, it's not safe. But, we are driving the bicycle. So, you have danger. It's not safe. I'm not saying you don't have to go to the shelter, but we weren't arranged for this situation now. We didn't know it's going to come. So I wasn't, I didn't know where to go. I'm a little bit confused of what's going on. I wasn't just celebrating a birthday in the beach, surfing, swimming. So everything is a little bit complicated. But we'll make sure it's going to go soon and we'll be safe again.
Finally, you think?
Very good evening. You're watching CNN News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Our top focus today, this Saturday, is the conflict brewing between Israel, Iran and the United States. And that is our top focus this hour as well. But first up, let's bring you the headlines. We're tracking this out. Unprecedented escalation in Middle East as Israel launches is Operation Lion's Roar, carries out preemptive strikes on Iran. A terror regime cannot be allowed to have nuclear power. US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu react, hail strikes against Iran. Iran retaliates, launches counter-strikes, fires ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel, all intercepted. Israel media reports suggest Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei and Iranian President Pezeshkian were targeted in the strikes. Iran versus Israel tensions spill across Middle East. This as explosions and sirens are heard in Qatar, Kuwait, UAE and Bahrain after Iran strikes back at US's military bases in the Middle East. India keeps a close watch. Indian embassy in Tehran issues advisory for citizens. Meanwhile, stranded Indian students sound an SOS to the Ministry of External Affairs. Iran's worst fears appear to be coming true. This as Israel and the United States have launched coordinated strikes overnight deep inside Iranian territory. Israel has called them preemptive operation to eliminate what it describes as existential threats. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and the US President Donald Trump have both asserted in the strongest terms that Iran cannot be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. Iran is currently retaliating, firing ballistic missiles towards northern Israel and reportedly targeting US bases in Bahrain, Kuwait and the UAE. Israel remains under national emergency with schools, public gatherings and most workplaces shut. Israeli media are reporting that among the possible targets were Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei and President Pezeshkian. Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is currently monitoring the operations from Mar-a-Lago Resort in Florida, where President Trump is also currently present. Back home, India's embassy in Tel Aviv has also issued an urgent advisory asking citizens to stay alert, avoid non-essential movement and remain close to the designated shelters. In fact, getting in breaking inputs on that note, Iranian media has reported that the leader, the president, the speaker of the parliament, the chief justice, the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and the commander-in-chief of the army are in full health. This is the information that's trickling in from what's being reported in Iranian media. The leader, of course, as we all know, is the Ayatollah himself. The president, of course, President Masoud Pezeshkian, the Speaker of the Parliament, the Chief Justice, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Army, which of course becomes extremely significant because remember, it is the IRGC that commands the maximum strength. It is what is currently the biggest threat to the United States and even Israel. The IRGC is currently wielding over 150,000 troops. It is the military which is extremely sophisticated in terms of weaponry, even though the US has amassed several naval air assets as well in the Middle East. But what we can tell you from information trickling in to counter the claims that are being made by Israel at the moment. Remember, we've also broken news of how the nuclear programs in charge has been eliminated, as is being claimed by the IDF. Aman Sharma joins me with more details. Aman, tell us what more information is the Iranian media sharing at the moment?
Well, see, Akanksha, by all means and by all accounts that we are hearing, this is a huge attack on Iran, both by the US and Israel as a team. And that is what we are seeing, and the news that we are getting is that there could have been big casualties in Iran, including some of their top leadership, some of their top defense officials could have been killed in this particular attack. That is what we are hearing. Iran's supreme leader and president and speaker of the parliament is in full health. That is what the Iranian reports are saying, but others could have been killed. The compound of the supreme leader was also attacked in this particular bombing, which has been carried out early today morning. So by all means, it seems like a huge attack, and Iran is vowing retaliation. Iran has already rained missiles on the US bases in various other countries, from Doha to Abu Dhabi to Bahrain. And there is what we are hearing now, that Iran is going to come back very strongly on this. But clearly the escalation in the Middle East, enveloping in fact many countries now, is a big cause of worry for the entire region, because this is what was being feared, Akanksha, over all these days, that the patience of Mr. Donald Trump and the US was running thin. He had given a 10-day deadline. The 10-day deadline is over, and the US staying in a way true to its promise, along with Israel, making big bombings in Iran, and big damage has been caused. The Donald Trump earlier coming out and say that the total navy of Iran will be annihilated by the US so that they cannot respond to the American strikes. It remains to be seen with how much strength Iran can now respond to this particular strikes.
Stay with me, Aman. Let's also break it down for our viewers in terms of what is the kind of military strength that Israel and Iran are currently commanding. Now, even with the US and Israel, in fact, conducting those joint strikes, what will this mean in terms of the conflict? Let's break it down for you in terms of numbers. Who holds the real edge? Overall manpower, if you look at Iran, the active personnel are close to 610,000. Israel has an active personnel strength of 170,000. Iran has a reserve of 350,000. Lakh again 4,65,000. And the Iranian paramilitary is close to 2 lakh. At the same time, the Israeli paramilitary is 35,000 in terms of air power. The total aircraft Iran currently is standing over is 551. What are the number of total aircraft with Iran? You're looking at 597. As far as Israel is concerned, the number of fighter jets that they are holding on to are 240. Iran has helicopters in terms of 128 is what we are being told. 147 helicopters as well. Let me quickly go back to Aman, who continues to stay with us. Aman, yes, the IRGC is an intimidatory force right now for the US to counter. But if you look at the kind of naval and air might that the US is wielding in the Middle East, could you also give us a sense of the kind of weaponry that US has already amassed? In fact, critics are already highlighting that this is the largest invasion force that the US has gathered in the Middle East ever since the Iraq War in 2003.
Oh, absolutely, Akanksha, and they've been preparing for days. You know, we have been hearing of all these reports for almost the last fortnight that how America is amassing its forces in that entire region, trying to, also force, in a way, Iran to toe the line and, come on the compromise formula that the US has been impressing upon them, that the Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump reiterated that today itself, that Iran by no means will be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and this whole exercise is being done in that regard. So I think the efforts over the past few days by the US by amassing this show of strength and these forces was to make Iran come back to that dotted line, come back to the table and sign on that dotted line. But clearly, Iran was also in no mood to play sport there, and they have also been saying that we cannot be blackmailed and forced by US into, surrendering our capability for nuclear weapons. So I think this was something which had to happen. But I think how America and Israel together have, in a way, surprised Iran today with this early morning strike is something that seems to have caught Iran on the wrong foot. Yes, they will retaliate, but I think the damage that the US and Israel have caused today morning in Iran, bombing various cities, not just the capital, but the various cities of Iran have been bombed, and the damage is still to be ascertained. How many casualties are there, we don't know yet, but it's very clear that US wants this regime to be changed, and that is why they are targeting their top leadership.
All right, stay with me, Aman. I'm also joined in by Rayan Amiri, who's an Iranian political activist, joining us live from Turkey. I can see Sanjay is continuing to be with us on this broadcast as well. Remember, Sanjay is currently in Israel. He's been there ever since Prime Minister Modi paid that visit. In fact, Prime Minister just arrived a day ago. So his own visit is fresh on the heels of this attack that's taken place on Iran and the counter strikes. Let me quickly go across to Sanjay. Sanjay, the information coming in is that the situation remains extremely fragile in Tel Aviv because not one but a number of blasts have been heard. Could you give us a sense of what's happening in ground zero?
Well, I myself heard two of these blasts. One just a very short while back, and it was a very loud, a very sharp blast. And that came almost moments after we had a reminder of an alert on the Homefront app that everyone has. Also, there was a siren that sounded. And I have to say that the minute the siren sounded, a lot of us went into the shelter. And in fact, I was perhaps the last to go in unwisely. And a lot of the Israelis here, very sensibly, this is a well-rehearsed routine here. They very sensibly, calmly, but without wasting a minute, went into the shelter. And they were all there, sat down very quietly. Then we had the all clear. And now they've stepped out and they're playing beach volleyball and they're out sunning themselves and paddling in the sea. But of course, everyone remains alert. Everyone remains very close to a bomb shelter, it's simply sensible to take shelter, and it's the government not just advice but directive to do so. So this is something that is well rehearsed. Israelis have been here before again and again. They know exactly what to do. And these steps that they're taking are upon Israel today. But the kind of steps are not new to Israel and to Israelis.
All right, Sanjay, I also want you to give me a sense of what is the status for all of those who are stranded currently, because as we speak, I'm also I'm in fact receiving several messages from various other Indian journalists who are also stranded over there. I'm sure that you must have interacted with many of them, given that they were accompanying Prime Minister's visit. What is the word coming in from the MEA right now?
Well, the MEA has issued a directive, and this is through the Indian embassy here in Tel Aviv, that people need to follow guidelines. They need to take precautions in line with the government directive and in line with the government advisory that has been circulated for a long time. And whether people have the Homefront app or not, an alert sounds on every phone. It sounds in every building, at every location, and in public space, that people need to follow those guidelines. There is no current move from the Indian government, from the MEA, for any evacuation of Indian citizens, but certainly they're being reminded of the alert that has been issued by the government here in Israel.
All right, Sanjay, stay with me. Rayan, I want to quickly bring you in. Just 3 days ago, there was a petition penned by close to 350 Iranian activists, even academia of Iran. They have said that war is not going to be able to ensure that poverty is eliminated. It will only bring back death and destruction. Do you think that a foreign intervention at this moment in Iran will be able to restore peace in the country?
Yeah, absolutely. I disagree with that statement. Look, the regime that we have inside Iran is a totalitarian regime. For such regime to be removed, to be dealt with, you need foreign intervention. It's been the process in history that regimes, the difference between the authoritarian regimes and totalitarian regimes is that the authoritarian regimes have a limit for violence. But the totalitarian regimes, such as the Islamist regime inside Iran, they don't have any limit. They will kill as much as they can to remain in power. So we must make sure that the level is fair for the battlefield. The playing field is level for the people to actually fight the regime and to remove the regime. So and also the Iranian people, they have leadership. They have Reza Shah II, Reza Shah Pahlavi II. They have a leader in exile that the majority inside Iran are chanting his name. They are chanting Javid Shah. Javid Shah, meaning long live the Shah. So they have a leader, they have an alternative, and they have foreign support. They have everything, every material to remove the regime. And the false
Rayan, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you there. There are mixed views on the fact if Reza Pahlavi is going to be welcomed as the interim ruler or as a permanent ruler for Iran, given that many are saying he lacks the grassroots connect because he was in exile, he remains in exile.
Yeah, look, Iran for centuries has been a monarchy. Monarchy always had a space inside Iran. The entire culture of Iran is tied to Iran and monarchy and monarchical institution. So His Majesty always had his base inside Iran based on that culture that is alive inside Iran and is very popular inside Iran. So, but today is even more popular, is even more different, because even the people who do not believe in a monarchy for Iran, they believe in the leadership of His Majesty Reza Shah Pahlavi II, because he is a unified leader to actually bring about a secular democracy for Iran up until the Iranian people decide for themselves in a free referendum.
Sanjay, many are questioning what is Endgame Iran, given that we've seen a lot of change of rationale coming in from the US president. First, he spoke about becoming this messiah of peace, coming to the rescue of the 32,000 protesters who've already been killed, bringing human rights back to Iran. Then the focus was brought back on Iran not compromising with its nuclear program, and then eventually an imminent threat to the American citizens because Iran is sitting over its arsenal of ballistic missiles. What is Endgame Iran over here as far as the United States and its planning is concerned?
Well, the end game is underway, is the first game, is to bring about regime change, is to try and eliminate the leadership of Iran. And the hope and the plan is that that itself sends a message, number one, within the Iranian government of lack of leadership at the top. And without a lack of leadership and the identifiable leadership that has taken a very strong stance against Israel and the US, if that was to vanish within hours, then certainly the rest of the Iranian government would lose their confidence in carrying on this fight. It needs to be led. And if the leadership is gone, then the fight will be gone sooner rather than later. So this is the game. And together with that, we've had the encouragement or the provocation, depending on how you look at it, from President Trump, asking people within the government to revolt, that within the IRGC in particular, and he spelled this out, they should either surrender or they will die. He's told people it's time to, well, be safe, but then come out in protest against the government, and that the US is with them as promised earlier and as being delivered now. The question is what kind of resistance the Iranian government can put up with the losses they've just suffered, whether they can stop this from getting any worse, whether they really can protect Khamenei. And that will be of critical importance, of central importance in how all this plays out. If Khamenei remains in place, it's very likely that a band of loyal supporters within the government will remain in place and they will remain in charge. Were he to disappear from the scene and from leadership, then on it becomes very hard for the rest of the leadership to muster the government together and to get a fight back going that is effective at all.
All right. Stay with me, getting in some breaking inputs. In fact, inputs shared by investigations editor Manoj Gupta. This is a CNN News 18 mega exclusive. Top security sources have informed us here at CNN News 18 that India's core interest lies in rapid de-escalation to avoid prolonged conflict. We want everyone to pursue back-channel engagement with both Washington, Tel Aviv and Tehran. Situation is extremely fluid because of multi-wave strikes and leadership status uncertainty. That's the input coming in. Let's quickly take that forward with Sanjay. Sanjay, remember, Iran still holds on to the biggest bargaining chip, which is the Strait of Hormuz. They have enough naval assets to block that strait. And remember, that's going to also impact the overall energy needs of the world, given that they could very well be blocking oil tankers supplying energy to not just China, Europe, even the United States.
Well, it is doubtful that they have enough of a naval force to block that strait for very long. The next step most certainly is going to be a naval warfare or air-to-naval warfare around that strait. And there will be a lot of firepower aimed at Iranian naval assets in the region, if that hasn't begun already. Clearly, that will be the aim of the Iranian Navy and of the Iranian government. But the US and Israeli forces would know that that is a plan, and they would have an arrangement and a plan in place to counter it. That is almost certainly underway. It's very necessary to keep that strait clear. There is also a limit to the number of Iranian naval assets. They have a few destroyers. They have also a level of submarine fleet, perhaps I believe about 17 submarines, not the most sophisticated, but certainly they are there in place and they can block this for a considerable time, but perhaps not for very long. So timing is of the essence. The speed with which Iran can try and block the strait, the extent of time through which it can sustain such a blockade, and on the other hand, how fast the US and Israeli forces can counter it and clear that out of the way. But it will be some time before it can be shipping as usual, because short of an attack, there will be the threat of an attack that certainly will inhibit shipping in that strait.
Ryan, when we speak about foreign intervention, we've seen there's history bears testimony to how U.S. interventionism has escalated the situation in Middle East. Rather, we've seen how the economies of various countries have borne the brunt, whether that is Syria, whether that is Iraq, or even Afghanistan. There are fears now being shared that Iran could also very well head into the same direction or have a similar trajectory. I'd like your thoughts on that concern.
Look, I respectfully disagree because there are also successful military interventions in history of U.S. wars. For example, you have South Korea is one of them. You have Germany that was liberated by helping from coming from the United States. So you have successful, experiences too. And also, of course, you have unsuccessful experiences. But the difference between, I'm very, that sometimes people compare the Iraq to Iran. That is a false comparison, in my opinion. Sometimes people compare Afghanistan to Iran. Iran is different. Iran is not a tribal society. Iranian people are one of the most educated people in the Middle East. The civic society in Iran is alive, is working. The civil disobedience is working in Iran. And people are active, they are united. People have a very strong sense of nationhood in Iran, which is not even present in Iraq, in Afghanistan. People are very united in Iran. They are not seeing themselves as parts of tribes or as parts of ethnic groups or religious groups. They see first themselves as parts of Iranian nationality, So that is the difference between Iran and Iraq. In Iraq, you had that tribal war because it had a tribal society. But Iran doesn't have that society. Iranian people are very united.
All right.
Yeah.
Stay with me. We also have more inputs coming in. In fact, one of our CNN correspondents on ground actually witnessed a missile being intercepted, this in the Qatari capital of Doha. Let's bring you that entire sequence which he managed to capture on camera.
We have seen and heard 2 waves of what we believe were air defense missiles. It's unclear whether they intercepted Iranian missiles, but we did see and hear those air defense missiles going off in West Bay in Doha, a place you're familiar with, a place that houses a lot of businesses, a lot of residential areas. And we're just getting word from the Ministry of Defense saying that they have the right to respond to any external threat. They said they successfully intercepted these missiles. Like I said, we didn't see that happen. We did see the air defense missiles take place here in West Bay. Traffic, I can see right now behind me, and I might just add that we are in a safe and protected space right now, but traffic has died down. There's very few cars on the road. People have been told to shelter and stay in place. We've received at least 4 emergency alert systems. Added onto that 2 alerts from the U.S. Embassy here in Qatar saying to shelter and stay in place.
Let me quickly go back to Sanjay, who also continues to stay with us. Sanjay, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, all of these 4 countries where you have US bases have been targeted. The prime concern is, are we looking at a domino effect now for all of the Middle East?
Well, the domino effect will depend upon the extent to which it takes place. Certainly, all we can say as of now is that such an effect is intended, and it is an attempt being made after it was announced. The Iranian leadership has said again and again that they will widen the war. It will not be just between Iran and Israel and Iran and the US, that they will widen it into the region. And this is what they are seeking to do. Now, that becomes a threat to the extent that this kind of attack becomes effective. At the moment, we've had the launch of a few missiles that appear to have been intercepted, which is not to say that the Iranian attempt has failed already. In the 12-day war last year, it is as fighting progressed that Iran became more and more successful in penetrating defenses. This certainly is now a game between Iran and also the forces, the US forces and other forces in these other regions. And to the extent that Iran perceives other Arab governments as supportive and protective of U.S. bases and U.S. interests, they too could be attacked and threatened with missiles. So this is a move that Iran had threatened to make. It has begun to make that move, and it will depend upon the success of these attacks, both in terms of immediate effect and in terms of their scale and extent, whether they do manage to succeed in widening the war as intended.
Absolutely. The next 24 to 48 hours are going to be extremely crucial. The situation remains extremely volatile, as we can see from everything that Sanjay has been sharing and narrating to us. Going to request Sanjay and Ryan Amiri to continue staying with us. This as we slip into a quick break. Stay tuned to CNN News 18, as we're the only channel that's going live from Tel Aviv, bringing you all the latest from Ground Zero. Stay tuned.
So that was the Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has appealed to all Iranians to come together, and he's called this the fight to remove a regime that always claimed death to Jews, death to Israel and death to America. Now, America has called this Operation Epic Fury. Israel has called it Operation Lion's Roll. Iran has called the retaliation as Fateh Khyber. Let's go across to Sanjay Suri joining us live, even as Israel has claimed to intercept one of the ballistic missiles sent their way by the Iranians. 30 to 75 ballistic missiles launched, according to Iranian media. Sanjay, what's the scenario? Have you seen the sirens go off? Yes, Sanjay. Sanjay, can you hear me? We'll just try and connect with you. We're getting pictures and also claims by the Israeli Defense Forces that their defense array is ready to meet the missiles that have been launched from their silos by the Iranians. Now, there is a large security deployment in Tehran. Roads have been blocked around the Khamenei residence. Israel has come out and said Israel has the right to defend itself. One missile launched from Iran towards central Israel was intercepted by the air defenses. There are no immediate reports of injury. Additional rocket fire towards the state of Israel, this time toward the center of the country. Sirens are now activated at the center and also at Shepsala. There is a fresh map that's come. We try and put that out. It's a huge cluster all across central Israel. That's where the Iranian response is being currently targeted. We've got one of those images here. I can try and show it to our viewers on my phone. But right now, what we're given to understand is this is a huge cluster, the latest that's come in on the news reports. Just showing it to our viewers, you can see. Sanjay Suri is with us. Sanjay, even as we are looking at a huge burst of alarms coming through, central Israel is currently being captured or being targeted. Yes, Sanjay. I'm going to reduce the brightness on my screen and try and go to Sanjay Suri.
We had the alarm going, we had a pre-alarm, and now we've had the siren going, and everyone's been asked to get to a shelter within 90 seconds. It's been more than that now. My friend here is right here with us. So why are you not inside a shelter?
It's too packed. It's too packed. Too many dogs, too many people, too many babies. So there's not a lot of space. And I'm waiting for it to be clear, what's going on.
Well, the shelter will be clear when the alarm goes away. The idea should be there, and it's not exactly a party time in a shelter, so there are going to be people there. Would you rather stay outside than be in a shelter?
I'd rather be safe, also outside, and I'd rather this situation will be stopped against Israel. But I have to make sure that everybody understands doesn't kill us, make us stronger. So as much threats we're going to have on our survival only makes us stronger. So be careful, because we are very safe and we are a very strong country and a beautiful country. And I invite
Thanks for staying on. You're watching CNN News 18. I'm Arunima. This is news that is just coming in as far as the conflict between Israel and Iran is concerned. The IDF is continuing to strike a wide range of targets in western Iran as part of Operation Roaring Lion. The IDF struck with the directions of IDF intelligence hundreds of Iranian military targets, including missile launchers in western Iran. We're just putting out for you pictures that has come in via the via the Israeli sources. These are IDF's strikes in western Iran, where a number of military installations and military targets based on precise intelligence have been targeted. Missile launchers were used in western Iran, and Israelis also managed to capture the visual as they carried out these attacks. My colleague Sanjay Suri is keeping an eye, hoping he'll join me in just a bit. But let me also bring in Ryan Amiri, Iranian political activist. He's joining us live from Turkey. Ryan, these visuals once again being released by Israel shows that they are targeting military installations in Iran, even though Iran is retaliating. How long do you think this standoff is going to last? Like last time, almost 2 weeks, or could this be swifter?
It's going to be much more faster than the 12-day war, because this regime. Let us be honest. This regime is a paper tiger in the face of a superpower and a regional power. This regime has nothing to say. Of course, they have some missiles or some drone, suicide drones, but these cannot stand in front of the largest military in the world and also the most powerful military in the Middle East. Look, as we speak, I've just received news that the Islamist regime in Iran is committing false flag operations, is attacking some schools, to blame the U.S. and Israel for that attack, to legitimize its oppression and everything like that. But these are the last struggles of a falling regime. That is what I can say.
Right. Ryan, Drew, hold on. United States is also going and supporting Israel in this. United States' own bases have been targeted in retaliatory action by Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump has issued his strongest warning yet to Iran, calling for unconditional surrender. Listen in.
I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms, you will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered, don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. We will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
So Donald Trump issuing a threat to Iran, asking for unconditional surrender, but Iran's retaliatory action continues. This is the latest update that we have for you. Iranian missiles struck the Mufaq al-Sutli base in Jordan, targeting United States forces there as part of broader attack on American bases across West Asia. So Iran is not holding back either. It is targeting United States bases. The latest that we have is that Iranian missiles struck the Mufaq al-Sutli base. This is in Jordan, targeting U.S. forces there. And this is in sync with the other attacks that Iran has carried out in the entire West Asian area. In that neighborhood, Iran has carried out multiple retaliatory attacks. Sanjay Suri with me. Sanjay, any further updates that you can share with us? Donald Trump issuing a clear threat, but Iran is now going ahead, pressing on the retaliatory accelerator. News just coming in that the Mufaq al-Sutli base in Jordan has also been attacked by Iranian missiles.
You know, that single action is quite significant. If even one Iranian missile this early in the day has got through and actually struck a U.S. base in Jordan, its implications are quite serious. Its implications are that it got through the air defenses at that base and struck target if it did. And if this is something that has happened with one missile, surely it could follow with others. And we saw that last year, Iran increasingly managed to penetrate air defenses in Israel. If it has already begun to do this in a scattered way at one location and another, then this may not be quite as one-sided as President Trump would like it to be. So this is a question now of what Iran hits back with, and to the extent that Iran is continuing to hit back and continuing to try to, it also presupposes that there is a regime in place, there's a command structure in place that is not cracking up under the pressure of this assault. It's not losing morale, certainly not this early, that it has defenses and offensive systems in place that it is bringing into play, and it is hitting back. Now, the way missiles go, certainly the majority of missiles will always be intercepted. It is a fraction that will get through, and success depends on how substantial that fraction is. Relatively a small number, but if it's absolutely a considerable number, then that is success, even though it's a fractional failure. Look at the 12-day war. Iran fired about 600 missiles at Israel. About 50 got through, not a big fraction, but enough to have done a good deal of damage. And for Iran, that was considered some form of success. So this getting through past defenses into Jordan is quite significant.
Right. Thanks for that, Sanjay. I would request Ryan to hold on because this is a developing story and we're getting updates by the minute. Now, CNN's Cedric Layton tells us where does Iran really stand and what is its position with respect to Israel and United States attack. Take a look at this analytical report.
What potential does Iran have? We know in the past, when they were attacked by Israel and the U.S., it was sort of an attack. It seemed like everybody was kind of on the same page. They did a response that wasn't a full-on response. It was in order to sort of check a box, but it wasn't, we're giving them everything we got. Do you expect that that could be what we see now from Iran? And if that is what happens, what is everything they got?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. And one of the key things here is what's left over from what happened in June. So, depending on how successful the
are reporting missile attacks. Those are the sirens in Bahrain, one of the countries reporting those strikes. Now, officials say a missile hit the service center of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. You can see here smoke billowing. And you can see here a missile flying over Erbil, Iraq. Jordan and Qatar said that they also intercepted missiles. Our team is up and covering the breaking story from around the world. We'll get to Paula Hancock's in a moment. But first, we'll go to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what's happening there?
Well, Victor, we have been witnessing over the last few hours the beginnings of Iran's retaliation for those U.S. and Israeli strikes targeting a variety of Iranian targets over the course of the last several hours. So far, we haven't witnessed any major impacts in Israel as a result of what an Israeli military official tells me have been dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles that have been targeted at Israel. It appears that the majority of those have so far been intercepted. This all began at about 8:15 a.m. local time here this morning with air raid sirens sounding across the country, warning Israelis of a state of emergency due to the fact that the United States and Israel had begun launching strikes against Iran. Those strikes cast off the diplomatic track that had been moving forward over the course of the last several weeks. It came just one day after the Omani foreign minister who was mediating these negotiations said he believed that a deal was potentially at hand. But it seems like President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lost patience with those negotiations and decided to go the military route instead, striking dozens of targets inside Iran, everything from Iran's ballistic missile program, its nuclear facilities, as well as senior Iranian targets. I'm told by two Israeli sources familiar with the matter that the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was the target of some of these Israeli strikes alongside several other senior Iranian figures. And we've been witnessing the Iranian retaliation across the Middle East, not just here in Israel, but strikes that have actually made impact near U.S. bases in other countries in the Middle East, particularly in the Gulf. This is a very volatile situation and one that certainly has the potential to escalate much, much further. A very perilous moment for the Middle East. And lastly, I would just note that we've just learned that Iran has also fired dozens of drones at Israel. Those typically take a bit longer to actually reach their targets here. They do tend to be intercepted, in particular by Israeli jets. We will see, but those are now en route to Israel. So this targeting and this back and forth is certainly going to continue throughout the day and, in fact, expected to continue for several days. Victor?
Jeremy Diamond reporting from Tel Aviv. Jeremy, thank you. Becky, the scope and scale of the response continuing to expand in this retaliation from Iran.
That's right. That's right. Explosions here in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, and heard over Dubai as well in the past couple of hours. Joining me now is CNN correspondent Paula Hancock, who is here in Abu Dhabi. What have we learned about the strikes here, Paula, and around this Gulf region?
Well, Becky, this is really an unprecedented level of military attack that these Gulf nations are undergoing at this point. As you mentioned, we have been hearing several explosions here in Abu Dhabi. We've heard from the Ministry of Defense saying that they have intercepted a number of those Iranian ballistic missiles, is what they called it, calling it a blatant attack. They have said, though, that one person has been killed by falling debris as well. A shelter in place warning here. Also, the airspace is closed. Going over to Qatar, this is where the Al Udeid military base is, the largest US military installation in the Middle East, and also the target of Iran back in June of last year when those US-Israeli strikes were hitting the nuclear facilities. That once again has become a target. We've heard from officials there that they have intercepted a number of missiles. In fact, just in the past 10 minutes or so, saying that a second wave has been intercepted into that area. Then you also have Bahrain. This is where the US Navy's 5th Fleet is based. We understand that has been targeted as well, and in Kuwait. We're also hearing about Jordan. They're saying that they have had to intercept a number of missiles. So the level of military attack that these Gulf nations are under at this point is really quite remarkable. Most of these are not countries that are accustomed to being under this level of attack. But all of these places have a shelter-in-place warning at this point. All of the authorities are saying stay indoors, do not go outside unless you absolutely have to, stay away from windows and stay safe. Becky?
We've just had a statement from the UAE's Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemning in the strongest terms Iran's blatant missile attacks targeting this country and brotherly nations, they say. They denounced in the strongest terms the blatant missile attacks that targeted the UAE, several brotherly nations in the region, considering these acts a flagrant violation of national sovereignty and a clear breach of international law, and reserve the right to respond. Paula Hancock, thank you. We've learned that the US has mapped out a plan of escalating strikes, each phase lasting a day or two, then pausing to assess the damage. Joining me now by phone is CNN's chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto. And Jim, this is your reporting. Just catch us up on what your sources are telling you.
A series of strikes escalating, and each phase of those strikes lasting 36 to 48 hours, followed by a pause, in part to assess battle damage, to see what targets hit, but also to assess Iran's response.
Well, we're live with Tom Cooper and Adrian Fontanelas, and on the sidelines of Rising Bharat, at a time when the world is looking at peace and stability, here comes the Americans and the Israelis. One is calling it epic fury, the other is calling it lion's roar, and the Iranians are responding with saying this is our Fateh Khyber. That's what they are calling it. But how do you see this response that I don't like the mullahs, I don't like the regime, they don't listen to me, so I'm going to blast them out?
Well, I think that nobody likes the mullahs on the post office, except perhaps 15 to 70 million of Iranians who have participated in the latest elections. So this is a matter of fact, so to say. But still, this is no way to run international diplomacy. This is simply just Trump saving private Netanyahu this time, from my point of view.
Now, why do you believe that Trump is saving private Netanyahu? Because it's America that's leading this one, contrary to the 12-day war.
It is enough for Americans to become directly involved in a war in the Middle East on the side of Israel. This is something Israel is daydreaming about for 80-something years, longer than Israel exists. There is, I think I mentioned this a few days ago in another interview, there is official documentation in the U.S. National Archives that Zionist leaders of what became Israel were originally planning to get the USA involved in fighting wars for Israel, and that was back in early 1948.
Yeah.
And now they have realized this plan. After all the time, the USA is fighting directly a war in favor of Israel.
Yeah, that's also because they wanted to say death to Jews, death to Israel. That was a call that's been given by the Ayatollahs for the last 47 years.
No doubt about this, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Adrian, your thoughts? No, you're entitled to your views because everybody is quite divided about what's going on in this space, because India has a huge Shia population, and for them, Ayatollah Khamenei is the spiritual head. There are a lot of others who say you could have looked at peace and Trump can't just bully his way everywhere. But there are others who say, hey, who's sponsoring the Hamas? Who's backing the Hezbollah? Why is it that these proxies have been trying? Who orchestrated and celebrated October 7 and the massacre of Jews? And who's doctrined the fact that all Jews must be wiped out? So if you take a position like that, there will be others who will say, all right, you're going to wipe me out, I want to wipe you out first. Where do you stand on this?
I would say, fortunately, the international law is quite clear in that regard. That is, you are not allowed to invade or strike militarily another country as long as you do not face real imminent threat. That means, according to international law, for example, if the Iranians had 1,000 missiles ready to be fired against Israel within the next 2 hours, it is correct for the Israeli to strike with missile batteries. But it is really last-ditch counteraction which is authorized by the international law. This was obviously not the case, and we perfectly know that there was this massive US buildup in the Middle East since at least 2 or 3 weeks. So it's quite simple. We are in a case of violation of the international law from the US and Israel, because although they said they were preempting some action by the Iranians, but we have really absolutely no evidence that the Iranians were on the verge of launching an imminent military operation.
But that is tactical, right? Now, immediate tactical development. But gents, understand this. Iran was trying to go nuclear. That's the biggest threat.
There's no evidence.
Yeah, that's the biggest perceived threat. One. They repeatedly said, don't enrich your uranium, but they claim they've enriched it 60% already. Now, the moment Iran goes nuclear, what happens to the neighboring regions? All of them would have wanted to go nuclear. Israel would have been the first to say, I want to go nuclear.
But Israel is already nuclear power.
Yeah, so but they would have had to declare it then openly.
Well, they wouldn't. Obviously, they wouldn't, because they are nuclear power already since at least 1967. If not longer, since 1976, they have run a test in Southern Atlantic. So this is a matter of fact. Nobody is in denial about this, at least since Vanunu affair, when he has revealed documentation and photographs of the Israeli nuclear
But
program.
Israel has never threatened or never claimed to use nukes as much as a Pakistan has, or as much as an Iran has, that we will develop our own nuclear weapons. See, this entire aspect of playing the nuclear bogey, raising it, has come from Islamic nations that have turned nuclear. That's another argument. The other part is that in terms of stability, look at what's happened now. Tehran's response has been to the US air bases in the neighboring Arab countries. Yes. But Saudi Arabia, which till last week was backing Iran, has turned around and said, we'll back whatever the UAE does. All resources input. That's the latest statement.
But Saudi Arabia has provided a military base to the United States. So therefore, Iran has the right to strike this military base in Saudi Arabia. It's as simple as that. This is, you can really check the UN Charter, rules of warfare and so on and so on, Geneva Conventions. There is a US base, Prince Saud or something, air base, not coming to my mind the precise designation, full of B-52 bombers and tanker aircraft. So Iran has the legal right to strike this air base in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so they have struck all the air bases. In fact, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi has spoken on phone with his counterparts in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq. He's spoken to all of them and said that, listen, hey, this is what's happened. This is why we've done whatever we've done. He's described the US and Israeli strikes as a flagrant violation of the fundamental principles of UN Charter, just like Tom, you were saying, and a clear crime against international peace and security. But what the Americans and the Israelis have turned around and said is, we need this regime change if there's got to be stability in this region. Do you buy that or not, Adrian?
I'm foremost an historian, so let's say that the previous attempts of regime change were not very successful, to say the least, if we think about Iraq, even Afghanistan, Libya. So I would be quite careful with this kind of line of arguments that some sudden and magical regime change in Iran will put an end of every problem in the Middle East. I mean, it's a theory which was not very well demonstrated in the past.
Besides, where do they, when is enough? This is something the Arab governments are all asking already for 2.5 years. When is enough? They have, Israel is bombed. Gaza Strip, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. Okay, this time, yes, Iraq as well, Iran, over the last 2.5 years, all in the name of peace. Okay, let's now let's see. As I said, as historians, let's see the last 75 years. Israel has promised peace and whatever else in 1967 as well. Did that result in any kind of peace? In 1982 again, when it invaded Lebanon. Did that result in any kind of peace? No. It resulted in 20 years of occupation and even more war. The same with the Gaza Strip, which began in 1967. No peace at all. How many ceasefires with Hamas, with Hezbollah, all were violated by Israel, not by Hamas or by Hezbollah. So therefore, when now somebody comes here and promises, oh, we are going to bomb another country just in order to make peace. Sorry, that is making me very, very skeptical.
Very, very skeptical. Ro Khanna has just tweeted saying that Trump has launched an illegal regime change war in Iran and American lives have been put at risk. Congress must convene on Monday to vote on a WPR that's mooted by him and Thomas Massie. Every member of Congress should go on record this weekend on how they will vote. That's what they are coming out. So there's politics, there's resistance within America also for a war like this. But somewhere, what do you think is the compulsion? The other part is, and interestingly, they're saying, if this continues, then that Strait of Hormuz gets choked. The airspace is closed, the seaways get closed, and the nations that suffer, including India or including Bharat, are China. China will suffer, South Asia will suffer. 40% of Chinese energy supplies are coming from that region. Yeah. So what are the Russians and the Chinese going to do in a situation like this? How do you see? Do you see this escalating further over the next few days, or?
I would say the Russians can basically talk, but they can't really act in support of Iran because they really have some other serious problem on hand. However, I would take the Chinese much more seriously in this affair because A few days ago, they communicated quite good quality photo satellites of American bases in the Middle East, which is a very clear signal. It means, hey, we can give the Iranians precise targeting informations in order to strike these bases at the correct spot with the short-range missiles. So it is not possible to know, but the Chinese obviously can have a kind of military influence in this conflict if they wish so.
Let me add one more thing. Everybody's talking about Iranians closing the Hormuz Straits. They need not closing the Hormuz Straits. If anybody is going to do that, then the Americans and perhaps Israelis, but foremost Americans. Why? Iranians have a pipeline. Which is connecting the oil fields with Shabahar, for example. So they can. They are capable of continuing to export, no matter what happens in the Straits of Hormuz. It is the question of what the Americans want to do over there. But because the Americans are intercepting ships, for example, underway with fuel for Cuba or exporting oil from Venezuela, the Iranians are not doing such things. So, again, you know, what is official claimed and what is actually going on and what is...
No, I think somewhere what has come out was outlined in the interest by and the real intent by the Americans and the Israelis. The first time the strikes were mounted, when they broke out and they started turning aggressor. One is they want a regime change. Two is they want to shut down Iran's nuclear weapons program and also its ballistic missiles program. So they now want to achieve both of this because the Iranians said we are not doing either of this as of now. That's what they said. Oman's foreign minister says US should not get sucked in further. This is not your war. Macron says, go ahead, we back you. Iran needs to remember that the regime change has to happen. You got to shut down your ballistic missiles program and your nuclear program. So that's what he is saying. Israeli government says the Iranian regime might target Jewish people or Jewish population elsewhere in the world. Now, this can fast go up the escalation ladder. How are we going to keep it closed? What's going to happen? Because there are cyber attacks happening. Shah Raza Pahlavi comes out and says, people, it's ready. Just be ready. I'll tell you when to get out on the streets and take control, seize power. Netanyahu calls on all people who have any Iranian roots, including the Baluch, including the Persians, including the Kurds, calling everybody he's doing it. So they are trying to create a multi-pronged, fast and effective, shock and awe kind of thing. But do you think that they're going to be able to achieve that with Iran? There are no pushovers, the Iranians. This regime,
There is never a way to predict all of this, especially if you take into the calculation the reaction of the Iranian civilian population. But because there is no way to predict this, neither for us, neither for the Pentagon, neither for Tel Aviv, this is no realistic strategy, because you do not count in a strategic action on perhaps it might be, let's hope that the Iranian civilians will do this or that, because...
So that was the Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has appealed to all Iranians to come together, and he's called this the fight to remove a regime that always claimed death to Jews, death to Israel, and death to America. Now, America has called this Operation Epic Fury. Israel has called it Operation Lion's Roll. Iran has called the retaliation as Fateh Khyber. Let's go across to Sanjay Suri joining us live, even as Israel has claimed to intercept one of the ballistic missiles sent their way by the Iranians. 30 to 75 ballistic missiles launched, according to Iranian media. Sanjay, what's the scenario? Have you seen the sirens go off? Yes, Sanjay. Sanjay, can you hear me? We'll just try and connect with you. We're getting pictures and also claims by the Israeli Defense Forces that their defense array is ready to meet the missiles that have been launched from their silos by the Iranians. Now, there is a large security deployment in Tehran. Roads have been blocked around the Khamenei residence. Israel has come out and said Israel has the right to defend itself. One missile launched from Iran towards central Israel was intercepted by the air defenses. There are no immediate reports of injury. Additional rocket fire towards the state of Israel, this time toward the center of the country. Sirens are now activated at the center and also at Shepsala. There is a fresh map that's come. We try and put that out. It's a huge cluster all across central Israel. That's where the Iranian response is being currently targeted. We've got one of those images here. I can try and show it to our viewers on my phone. But right now, what we're given to understand is this is a huge cluster. The latest that's come in on the news reports, just showing it to our viewers. You can see Sanjay Suri is with us. Sanjay, even as we are looking at a huge burst of alarms coming through, central Israel is currently being captured or being targeted. Yes, Sanjay. I'm going to reduce the brightness on my screen and try and go to Sanjay Suri.
We had the alarm going.
Yes.
Good evening. Welcome back to our continuing and rolling coverage here on CNN News 18. It is the biggest confrontation that we have seen in the Middle East in at least the last 20, if not 25 years. America and Israel have struck at multiple targets across Iran after a huge naval and air force buildup over the last 2 months. Numerous targets, at least a dozen targets, have been struck across the length and breadth of Iran, including multiple targets inside the capital, Tehran. The defense minister, one of the chief advisors of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, are set to be among the targets and possibly the fatalities as well. But the two main principal protagonists in Iran, the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the President Masoud Pezeshkian, are supposed to be living by the skin of their teeth. They have managed to escape this joint American-Israeli assault. But Iran is not cowing down either. Iran has sent ballistic missiles towards multiple American military bases in the Middle East and also at Israel. But most of these ballistic missiles have been intercepted. I want to first bring you up to speed with a series of reactions that have been coming in from the Middle East, from Europe, from the United States on what is an unprecedented joint military strike, a thunderbolt at Iran, something that we've been predicting for a number of weeks, given the armada of naval ships and aircraft that were moved to the Persian Gulf. Now it is finally here. The question is, who can intervene and get both sides to see reason and to de-escalate? Or are we going to see this climb up the escalation ladder for much longer before we see both sides climbing down?
I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. We will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
We're getting a piece of breaking news. Oman, which was the intermediary country, the mediator country between the United States and Iran in talks that it hosted over these last few weeks. The third set of talks happened earlier this week. There was no fruition to those talks. There was no concrete result at the end of that talk. And now America and Israel have jointly attacked Iran. Now the Omanian foreign minister has urged the United States not to get sucked in further, saying that this is not your war. Oman's foreign minister has said that neither the interests of the United States nor the cause of global peace are well served by this. Remember, viewers, Oman was the facilitator between the talks that happened between US and Iran. There were 3 rounds of talks. The first happened in Muscat and 2 rounds of talks in Geneva, including just earlier this week. Ultimately, those talks did not bridge the gap between Iran and the United States. And now there is a full frontal, a full-blown assault a joint assault by American and Israeli troops against Iranian targets. I want to go across to Sanjay Suri, who's joining us with more on this. He's joining us live from Tel Aviv. First of all, Sanjay, tell us what is happening around you. I believe warning sirens have been going off, bunker messages have been coming out to the Israeli people as well. Anything that is non-essential has been curtailed, whether it is school services, hospital services, recreational services. Everything has been completely cut off from public life in Israel right now. Sirens, air raid sirens have been going off since this afternoon for the last few hours. If you live in Israel, there is an app, a national app, which is mandatory for every resident to download, and that gives you real-time updates about these live siren raids that are going on, and then that will guide you also to the nearest bomb shelter. Every block, every neighborhood, every building has a bomb shelter mandated by law. And most Israeli citizens, whether they're in big cities like Tel Aviv or in small towns, have been taking shelter in place after these multiple air raid siren warnings have been issued. I want to go across to Sanjay Suri, who's joining us live from Tel Aviv. In fact, one of the few Indian channels to be reporting right now, live from Israel, where all the action seems to be happening. First of all, what is the sense you're picking up around you? What are you seeing and hearing around you? And in terms of these retaliatory ballistic missile strikes by Iran, we saw this back in June of last year in the 12-day war. We're seeing this now as well. What is the latest on that? Have much of these ballistic missile retaliatory attacks been thwarted?
Well, it appears so because we haven't had any significant strike in Israel. Here in Tel Aviv, since morning, we've had the siren going off several times. Together with that, the alert on the phone, and there's a home front app that everyone's been given. And even if you don't have the app, there is an alert that sounds on the phone. So there have been a number of times since morning already when people have gone into a shelter. I did hear 2 loud blasts. Most certainly, these were not any incoming missiles that struck, perhaps air defense systems being launched from within the vicinity. That would have been the blast, most certainly, that I would have heard. And again, people here are being quite disciplined about these air raid alerts. Every time there is a siren, people do go very calmly, very quickly into an air raid shelter. The whole street gets deserted. And once there's an all clear, then they come out and it's business as usual. It's a very well-rehearsed routine. And Zaka, we know that in Israel, every Jewish person above the 18 has to do military service. So when we are speaking about the civilian population in Israel, we are speaking also of the military population in Israel. It's a very disciplined lot. They know exactly what to do. They follow these rules very strictly, very promptly. And there is no sense of nerves or fear. There is a calm sense of reassurance, if anything, that this situation has developed. The fear in Israel would be if the build-up had led to nothing of the kind that we are seeing, and if the U.S. forces had gone back. This is what Israel has been looking for, Netanyahu in particular has been looking for, and this at last is what Israel has long wanted to do.
Sanjay, just quickly, in terms of the Iranian response, the retaliatory strikes, the ballistic missile strikes that we're seeing multiple U.S. bases being targeted, or at least attempted to be targeted, whether it's in the UAE, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Kuwait. What are you picking up on that front? How long before the U.S. and Israel come to a conclusion that this is as much as Iran can hit back and then go for the jugular, or vice versa, that they decide to climb down? Which way are we looking at this unfold over the next few hours and days?
You know, the difference is, as you outlined at the start, Zaka, being hit or being attempted or attempting to hit. And there lies the critical difference. We know that the Iranian leadership had said ahead of all this that they would widen the war. It would not just be a war between Iran and the US or Iran and Israel, that they would widen it into the region. We are seeing the beginning of an attempt in that direction. This has not gone very far as yet, which is not to say that that is conclusively the case. If you look at the pattern of the 12-day war between Iran and June, yes, you were saying, Zaga?
No, go ahead, Sanjay, finish your point, please.
No, in the last war, it is only in the later stages and in the later days of the war that Iran managed to penetrate more and more of Israeli defenses. So Iran could be looking at that as a tactic to repeat. On the other hand, Israel and the US would be well prepared for that intent of Iran. So they would have defenses in place to guard against such a scenario and such a tactic. So if the Iranian missile network survives this assault at all, then most certainly that is the kind of tactic that they would deploy. At the moment, it's not certain how much of that is in place, how much has been taken out, and how much of this might be a waiting game by Iran if they have the luxury of waiting and choosing at all.
All right, Sanjay Suri, for the moment, we'll leave it at that. We'll come back to you in the next hour and try and check in with you on what's going on there in Israel. Multiple air raid sirens have gone off since the last few hours in Israel, since Israel made it public that in a joint operation, both American and Israeli militaries have carried out multiple air attacks on Iran at multiple targets, more than a dozen targets. Iran has been retaliating as well. Not much of those have been actually successful. Let me go across to Brahma Chilani, strategic affairs expert, who's now joining us. This is something that we were all predicting, anticipating over the last few weeks, if not the last couple of months. Now it's here. The attacks by Israel and America are here. They've hit multiple targets. We're not sure exactly what are the high-profile targets that have been taken out as a result of these strikes. But one thing is also clear, Professor, that Iran is not just sitting on its hands. It's retaliating back at Israel, back at American military bases across the Middle East. How far successful those retaliatory strikes are, the jury's still out on that. How do you see this play out over the next few hours? Will there be some, better sense prevailing in that sense that both sides will eventually climb down? Or do you see this further escalating before better sense prevails?
Zaka, there are two surprises in how this war began. The first surprise came from Israel joining hands with the US in jointly launching this war on Iran. Nobody expected Israel to join at the very outset because the expectation was that in retaliation to Iranian strikes, Israel would be dragged into the conflict. The second big surprise is that just when Iran at the negotiating table agreed to make major concessions on the nuclear front, including surrendering its enriched uranium stockpile and forswearing nuclear weapon ambitions permanently, at that very moment, the US chose to attack Iran, which goes to show that the real objective extends beyond nuclear non-proliferation to disarming Iran and installing a pliable regime in Tehran. In fact, President Trump has clearly, publicly outlined that objective, the end objective of this war. And by defining regime change as the political objective of this military campaign, he has set a very high goal. Realizing that goal may prolong this conflict for months, if not for years. We should not forget that when George W. Bush invaded Iraq in 2003, and what he promised, and what eventually turned out to be a long occupation of Iraq, today American analysts from both sides, whether Democratic or Republican, accept that the Iraq war was a disaster for the U.S.
But Professor, tell me, we know that it is not in Trump's nature to get entangled in long, winding wars. He wants quick results, he wants quick wins. But having, set this lofty goal of asking the Iranian people to go out there and, capture your state, overthrow the regime, the mismatch between Trump's stated goals or stated personality of wanting quick wins and a quick wrap and not getting entangled, and his stated goal of regime change, at least that's the way he's publicly presented. How does he bridge this gap? Is it not possible to bridge it at all?
It has to be kept in mind, Zaka, that in the first year of his second term, he has already carried out more military attacks on countries than Joe Biden did in his entire 4-year term. And these attacks that Trump carried out, he has managed to present them as military successes and political successes. Emboldened by that record, he has set out to change the regime in Tehran. It's going to be formidable task to change the regime in Iran, because once a regime's very survival is threatened, and so openly, is going to respond with no constraints. And that's the reason why Iran has, on the first day itself, struck American bases in 5 different Gulf countries.
Okay.
And it'll go to any extent by asking Iranians to occupy government, to take over the government, as Trump put it.
Yeah.
He's sending them to death. Because, even the earlier street protests, the mass protests that fled, as now is being acknowledged in the West, were orchestrated by US intelligence and Israel. But that led to thousands of Iranians dying at the hands of Iranian security forces. So one mission failed, that is to topple the regime through street protests. Now a military operation is being carried out for the same mission, to change the regime, to have a more pliable regime in Tehran. And I think this time Trump might not pull off a success. He might actually get entangled in a potential military quagmire, or at least he might end up aborting a mission, aborting an operation, without accomplishing the goal that he has outlined in his speech.
40 years ago, Jimmy Carter, former US president, got entangled in what happened in Iran. He got stuck on the wrong side of that revolution that happened, which eventually led to the formation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to the entry into power of the Ayatollah regime. Avishag Avinom is a former media coordinator to the Israeli Prime Minister, who's also now joining us. We will try and get Avishag, but here's the thing. Iran is not just sitting on its hands, Avishag. They are responding. Now, the jury is out on whether the retaliatory strikes are successful or not. But do you see this play itself out in a way that is more destructive, more devastating than the 12-day war? Because ultimately, Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu have left a lofty goal, which is regime change in Iran. And that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to take some serious effort and time. Does that square with President Trump's instincts to get a quick win? And more importantly, what happens over the next, let's say, 24 to 48 hours? Because Iran is retaliating. It is responding. It is not kowtowing.
Well, I cannot really compare to the 12 days war what will happen, because as you've seen, Iran really retaliated and regionally, not only targeted Israel. So there are other actors, regional actors, that probably will be involved. As we've seen the statesmen coming out from the foreign ministry of Jordan and also from Qatar. And we've seen also now in Sweden, in Syria, you have four deaths from a rocket that hit a private home. So now I think what will happen is that there are two major things that will happen. Iran is acting now like a panic attacked child, which it is. It's in its worst state since the Islamic regime took place in the 70s. So what will happen right now is two things. They will use the rest of their military stock, and they will try to attack everything, everywhere in the region. So that's what they will do right now. I don't know really for sure if it will be a quick change of regime or not. We don't know that yet. It really depends on the Iranian people and the protests that we've seen resumed in the last few days. So it really depends on them, and also it depends on America and Israel, which are the only ones who who are cooperating right now with this attack, in which specific targets they will hit, because they need to neutralize not only governmental institutions and military institutions, they need to also target on the regime collaborators that help to suppress the protests. So it's really
I'll just come to that in 1 second about this call to arms, not call to arms, but call for regime change that Trump has instituted to the Iranian people in his speech, saying that once this is over, come out and capture or retake your government. How much that will happen, particularly bearing in light what happened just a few weeks ago. More than 6,000 protesters, by the most conservative estimates, were killed brutally by the iron fist of the regime. So what will entice people to come forth again back out on the street and try to topple this regime? But we're getting a response from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. This is a breaking story at this moment here on CNN News 18. He's put out a statement where he has said that Netanyahu and Trump's war on Iran is wholly unprovoked, it is illegal, and it is illegitimate. Trump has turned America first into Israel first, which always means America last. Our powerful armed forces are prepared for this day and will teach the aggressors the lesson they deserve. All right, let me go back to Abhishek on this. So obviously there's a lot of bluster, there's a lot of mind games that are going on right now. But Iran's foreign minister is underlining the fact, he's also trying to drive a wedge between America and Israel, saying this is not America's war. America has no business to be conducting this war. And basically putting America first is actually shorthand for putting Israel first. It's actually America last. What do you think he's trying to do here? And will this actually fly with Israel and with the United States?
Yeah, so it's very simple. We all follow the division within the MAGA movement, which you have the more isolationist members like Tucker Carlson and others like him that really pumping Qatar propaganda, which is supporting Israel as the as U.S. ally, the most trusted and powerful ally in the region, is not beneficial to the U.S. So what we are seeing here is basically a fueling of this narrative, so they can basically, the mega supporters of the isolation movement within it, they will take it and they will see and they will publish it and they will see, oh, look at that. This is America has no business with Iran, which is absolutely false. We all seen multiple times the threats that the Iranian regime and their supporters chanting within different assemblies and in the streets, death to America, death to Israel. Israel is the little Satan and America is the big Satan. So it's just part of the Qatari propaganda machine that meant to basically paint Israel in dark colors and portray us as if we are a burden to the American nation.
So I want to ask Brahmachalani this as well. The three objectives that were outlined was one, regime change, which I think is the most difficult thing to achieve here. The other was to try and get Iran to forcibly agree to zero enrichment of uranium, therefore making no nuclear weapons, or at least not attempting to make a nuclear weapon. That's number two. And number three is putting a curtailment on these ballistic missiles. Do you think that the American-Israeli joint strikes are now moving in that direction of forcing Iran into making concessions on all three of those fronts?
Zaka, the U.S. has been moving the goalposts. You would recall that last June, after bombing Iran's nuclear sites, Trump had publicly stated that Iran's nuclear capability had been, quote unquote, completely obliterated, and that it would take them years to reconstitute that capability. Second, more importantly, the Omani foreign minister, who was a key negotiator in the US-Iran talks, he, just hours before the joint war was launched against Iran, he publicly disclosed that in the negotiations, Iran had finally agreed to give up its enriched uranium stockpile and also forswear nuclear weapon ambitions forever. In other words, there was a virtual capitulation by Tehran at the negotiating table.
So why did America and Israel still strike? Go ahead and strike.
Because their objective was not nuclear non-proliferation. Their objective was regime change in Iran, and also included first disarming Iran, not just on the nuclear side, disarming Iran's missile capability. Because we have to keep in mind that Iran doesn't have an air force, and its air defenses are very weak or non-existent. So its main weapons of deterrence are ballistic missiles and drones. So to disarm Iran, both Israel and the US have decided to strike its missile and drone infrastructure. That will completely disarm Iran and leave it exposed to strikes by the US and Israel at any time of their choosing.
Okay.
So the objective now extends far beyond the nuclear front.
Abhishek, here's the thing. If the objective is regime change, and you heard President